So, hi everyone. We're here today at Sani Sport in Brossard. I'm here with Ricky Twynam, so we'll get right into it. Ricky, talk to us a bit about you. Why are we here, and what is it you do?
Okay, well, we're in my second home here. This is Sani Brossard, one of our installations that we bought a couple years back. We own the two Sani Boucherville and Sani Brossard. It was a dream of mine to have my own tennis club since a pretty young age. Happy to have been able to go through a long journey of the last 30 years to be at this moment and be in this place now. Yeah, Sani Sport Brossard. Welcome home, guys.
In the South Shore of Montreal, there's two locations, as he just said. And it's not only tennis. You guys have like complete like sports facilities, like gym and other stuff, right?
We have full state-of-the-art gyms. We have pickleball. We have tennis. We have squash. We have racquetball. We have two fully serving restaurants, and we have two full boutiques as well. So over 295,000 square feet of sports
facilities,
surface.
Mostly racket sports, though, right?
Mostly rackets is what we do. It's our specialty, and fitness is tied into that. And healthy eating and a little trendy sports shopping as well.
Okay. Well, we've known each other for quite a while, so I'll start it off by talk to me, because at heart you are a tennis player. So you reached a pretty high level. It is a sport that you have to start pretty young. So take us back to the start. What was your journey like?
Okay, well, I've always been a fanatic of sports, whether it was baseball, which started, or basketball, or football, or soccer. I was always playing sports, and I think if I would have been born in this generation, someone would have called me ADD for sure. I played sports day and night. You couldn't get me off any sports, but they were all team sports that I played, and up until the age of about 12, and discovered tennis. My uncle was a tennis pro at the moment, and always was kind of asking me sometimes if I wanted to go join him on the court and hit some balls and stuff. And I did, and I signed up for Jeux de Québec like 4 weeks later and won it in my region. Brought me to Val d'Or and ended up playing a team event over there. Loved the game. Realized that I controlled a lot more of my destiny in an individual sport like tennis than I did in a team sport like everything else I was playing. So the journey began at 12. I wanted to be one of the best players here in Quebec. My uncle was training me at the moment. He was working. He was in charge of all the junior programs at Tennis 13 at the time. And thanks, a little peace out, shout out to Tennis 13 for all the years and the help that they gave, the free court access that they used to give to me back in the days as well. Big shout out to Alex Shields too, who was a big mentor for me, who always just kind of was a big brother, always healthy lifestyle. We were just playing sports pretty much day and night, even into my 16s, 17s, where it's like he realized at that moment too, I need to see some girls. We'd go take a drive downtown sometimes just to be able to balance things out. So he's a great big bro that was always there for me and always helped me kind of develop my passion for tennis. And by the time I was 17, I was in the top 5 juniors in Canada, which was a pretty quick road, but I was working pretty much day and night at the time, running hills and doing whatever I could do to get to that next level. I wasn't in a sports study program, so I was in school till 4. My dad would pick me up, drop me off at Tennis 13. I'd stay there from 4 to midnight pretty much and come back at the end of the day with Alex, and we'd repeat the next day and pretty much do that 7 days a week.
In case some people that don't necessarily high level tennis and are listening to this, tennis, especially when you're not playing for fun, but when you're working towards a goal of becoming, like you just said, like top in your state, in your province, in your country, it is a grind, and you have to spend the hours on the court. It's not some. It's a sport of. It's very technical. It's very physical, but that swing, it takes years to master. So technically, like when Ricky says, I guess when you say like 4 to 12, maybe some people who don't know tennis would think you'd be exaggerating, but it's actually like
Yeah, there would be 2 hours of training. There would be an hour break. There'd be a bit of fitness. There'd be maybe some matches near the afternoon, a bit of homework, maybe a nap on the couch, and restart it again. And we just kind of were in that mindset for pretty much the 12 to 17 period until before I started to go more onto the international circuits, but got into the top 5 in Canada and was super happy about that, and didn't really know how far I could take it from there because my goal was just to be top in Canada, and that was it. I didn't really want to think I could go further than that. And then, there was international circuits and playing futures and challengers and stuff like that, where I feel like that was the period of life that was the big learning lesson. That's where you really realize what separates the best from the mediocres, because everybody plays well, everybody has a good forehand, everybody has a good backhand, everybody can slice, everybody can drop shot, everybody's fast, everybody's endurant. But the mindset, and I think the mindset is what makes the difference between the big champions. And I think it's at that point that I really started to change myself also around 22, 23 at the end of my tennis journey, when I started to realize that maybe in doubles I could play top 100. Singles, I didn't really feel like I could maybe pass the top 250. So I was just like, at that point, maybe the best thing for me was just to kind of, go a different road and stuff. But the tennis just kept teaching me what it was to have the mindset. I saw it and I realized it at that point. And I remember a little story, quick. I'm playing a tournament in Key Biscayne,
Okay.
21, 22 years old. I lose a match to Jamie Saratani, 7-6 in the third, qualifying match to go into the main draw. And a big black hand came behind me, and it was Bill Adams, and he was an academy director in Florida, and he invited me to the academy to come train with them and try out a little couple weeks and before leaving for Texas for the next tournament. And second day, we're talking about mindset, and I have a lot of trouble dealing with my mindset at that point. And he brought me a book that night at like 10 o'clock at night. It was Mind Gym, and Gary Mack was the author. He was working as a sports psychologist who was working with tons of high-level athletes at the time.
Okay.
And Gary Mack just kind of, it was talking to me, and I read the entire book that night. I crushed it from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., crushed the entire book. And I think that's when my life began to change. I think that's when I realized that I had control over everything. Before, I was hoping, I was wishing, I was praying that things would happen. And at that moment, I think I realized that everything was in my control, and it depended how I would react to situations, how I would think about situations. And I realized that I had a lot more power than I realized.
But between that 17-year-old period to 23, you said you went international, like in Europe, right?
Pretty much everywhere. At first, I left for Spain. That was the first trip on my own. At 17 years old, I went to Valencia. I was playing with guys like David Ferrer, Marat,
nice.
Igor Andreev. There was, Dinara Safina. There was tons of really good players, Alex Calatrava. And I think that moment was, you see the next level. You see, Marat coming back with the US Open title.
Yeah.
You see, Marat all of a sudden buying 2-3 Ferraris. And, you start to see the other side of life. And at the time, Mats Wilander was working with Marat as well. So getting to talk with legends like that and people who have had the highest successes in what they do, I think that moment was probably very interesting for me at that moment, because I think it really made me realize, okay, I want to have success in my life. I'm not sure exactly how to have it, but I'm sure that that's the mindset I need to have to get it.
And it is, let's be honest, it is a costly sport. So, I mean, did you already have sponsors at that age to fund all that? Or?
I had a few sponsors that were taking care of some of my travel expenses. My parents had taken out a credit line at that time to help me out. So there was a lot of pressure financially at that period of time as well. So there was a period where the passion for tennis was up and down. Yeah. When I was winning, I was loving it. When I was losing, I was hating it. And I think that's what kind of made me at one point make the decision to stop around 23 and start focusing on other things, because that pressure was getting to me a lot, and it was a big challenge. I had clothing sponsors, you get a bunch of stuff like that, but financial, it's really expensive to be out on the road all year long. It's probably $75K, and at that time we'd be like 5-6 guys in a room. You win, you get the bed. You lose, you get the floor. Instead of taking the plane to the next tournament, we'd take a bus. We'd hitch a ride if we had to. It was a grind, but it was one of the better periods of my life, because I had nothing, I owned nothing, and I was free. And at the time, we had no cell phones, we had no laptops, we had no nothing. So I was literally going to public phone and pressing 0, calling collect to call my parents back home to let them know I was okay every like 5-6 days. So that was a pretty interesting period of the life. And then traveling all over South America, the States, Canada, different parts of Europe. I think that really helped me grow as a person too, and just realize how lucky we are here in Canada versus other places, being in places like Ecuador or Colombia or Venezuela, or they don't have the life that we have here in Canada. And I think I started to appreciate things a lot more at that point in my life too as well. And I think my whole mindset really started to shift in that phase of my life between like 21 and 23, I guess, from the cocky little guy who thinks he's a really good tennis player, who gets his feet kind of put back onto the ground really quickly on the international circuits, and then just kind of doing my own part of my life and finding myself in my journey. And then at 23, when I started to coach, I knew exactly why the 10 years before I played. You know, it was instant gratification for me to coach people. I felt like it's exactly what I was supposed to do in my life, and helping other people was just giving me so much in return. And that journey just started at 23, and here I am at 42, 20 years later, and still doing what I love, and I'm still on court, and I don't have to be on court, but I choose to be on court.
Yeah.
And I love it. A lot of people are surprised that the owner's on the court giving lessons and might randomly show up and run on and volley to volley with a kid. And I just love the game so much, and the game's given so much back to me that I just have to keep giving back to the game that gave me so much.
It is a tough sport, and you know, we could get into it, I think, for hours, but I think like tennis is always becoming more and more popular. There's more TV coverage. I think the big three on the men's side in the last 20 years have really sort of like surpassed tennis as a sport. I'm talking about Roger Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. So you see more and more people playing. There's a lot more courts, I find, in Canada compared to the US.
Yep.
Now there's a lot more just where we are here in Montreal, the South Shore, the greater Montreal area. But what I think people don't understand is that you played really high level, but when you see them on TV, I'm talking about the Federers and the Nadals, the level is so up there, and it doesn't, like, they make you look bad, but you're still better than you said it, you're top 5 in Canada. So what in your mind would and I guess we could talk maybe about it in a further segment, but quick on it, since you were talking about the grind, don't you think that there's changes that need to be done to tennis, in the sense that I'll just compare it like quickly. NHL, you get injured, you're backed up because you sign a contract. Pickleball, which is a new thing, you sign a contract, you're backed up. Let's say you get injured. Tennis, you don't win, and you probably went through it. I think you starve, right?
You do starve, and I mean, there was periods of eating craft dinner for 30 days straight,
and you're an athlete on top of it.
And that's the problem, right? Like, so you're on that circuit, and you got different kinds of guys that are out there with different financial situations. You got some guys that are there with 3 coaches. They got a tennis coach, they got a fitness coach, they got a psychologist, they got their mom and dad with them, and they got 2 other people, just their buddies, just to chill with. We didn't have that opportunity. We were grinding it out pretty hard at that period. And at that period, tennis in Canada, I can remember some guys on the international circuits kind of making fun of us being Canadians. Like, we only know how to play doubles, and we only know how to play hockey. That was kind of, you live in igloos in Canada. Like, there was a really, naiveness about Canada and tennis and the relation of the two. And I think there's a big ups to tennis in Canada since 2007, 2008. There's been a big wave of high level international tennis players, and I think we're very well respected now on the international circuits. People, when we walk in with Tennis Canada jackets, now the question is, what are you guys doing? Not type of deal. So I think that changed a lot. And we have I think we share more. I think we're able to take the best people in our country and put our minds together and work together and collaborate to kind of get better ideas and stuff. And I don't know if that was being done necessarily 20 years ago, but it's done now, and it's done better. It's not perfect. It still can always improve, but it's a lot better than where it was 20 years ago. And I think I was a lot more mad with the situation of tennis in Canada 20 years ago than I am today. There's more opportunities for the kids. We were all on our own. We had 7, 8 guys in the country at the time that were playing a good level. And there'd be 2 from Quebec, 2 from Vancouver, 2 from Alberta, 2 from Toronto, and we'd all end up in circuits on the road together. But Tennis Canada wasn't supporting us at that time.
And not to bring any demeanor to past players. We respect them, of course, but I think, like you just said, it evolved, because back then, like, I think you were happy even to make the qualifications for a Grand Slam. And these days, with the Bianca Andreescu's, Leila Fernandez, and Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime, like, we expect them to make almost like, second week of slams.
Absolutely. And you're right what you say, because we were content with very little before.
Yeah. And
I think we're not content unless we're winning stuff now. And I think that's a great mindset for the entire country, and our culture in tennis. I think it's changed a lot because of that.
Well, that brings me to the next segment. So after your career, I'd say, on tour and your grind, you said you were 23. Then it's all about you coaching and becoming a manager, and then the tennis academy. So can you get a bit into that?
Yeah, well, that was a different chapter at that point. At 23, it was a decision that was really difficult to make for me to stop playing tennis, because there had been so much time now over the last 10 years before that invested into it.
But Sorry, I'm just. Why'd you stop?
Money.
Yeah.
Good. Money. I mean, it came down, let's be honest, it came down to money. The grind was getting harder and harder and heavier. And it started to feel like I always had like my pockets like this.
Yeah.
And, you're 23 years old. You want to go on a date with a girl and you pretty much the only place you could take her to is Taco Bell because that's about the only cash you got to take her to.
You could have invited her to your tennis tournaments, I'm not sure, and challengers or futures with the dog in the park there, but
for sure, yeah, they would come to the matches and stuff. But I mean, there was a point where there was a lot of things that I wanted, I think, at that point, and I just couldn't have. And as soon as I started coaching, I can remember, shout out to Craig Mercer for our first business that we opened up together, Orize Sports Management in 2007. We had a great opportunity in Longueuil, a club that was kind of, 10 courts and a little clubhouse, but it was kind of not working at the time, almost close to bankruptcy. Two young guys come in, they let us kind of run our show, sign a contract with them for 4 or 5 years. And, Craig and I built this thing where we just wanted to make tennis cooler. That's what we wanted at the time. And we wanted to give opportunities for kids to play tennis. And we were going into schools, promoting tennis, doing tweeners and flying smashes and walking into our club and doing open houses. And, we're just promoting tennis like crazy all over the South Shore of Quebec at the time. And I think, we were just young, passionate guys about tennis. And we were curious on how we can make money with the sport that we love. Like my dad had always said, if you can find a passion in your life and make your living with it, then you'll never work a day in your life.
No, he's right.
That was his quote.
I believe that.
And I still, to this day, always think about it. And we made $100,000 the first month. We sold out all our programs. And I never touched $100,000 in my hands at that time in my life. So I looked at it and it was like, do I play tennis or do I coach? And I have $100,000 or I have minus $20,000. And I'm like, well, you know what? I think life is calling me to be a coach. And I think this is the path that I need to be on. So we rolled on that path. I stayed in Longueuil for 8 to 10 years where I got a lot of mileage, a lot of experience, working with all kinds of clienteles. I always had my performance programs, but I also worked with the adults and young juniors and privates and events and everything.
Yeah, you had good players coming up.
Yeah,
We
had some good players. Yeah, we had some players that were top national ranked players that went off to NCAA Division I, some players that played on tour. So I think we achieved the objective with what we had at that moment and at that time. We put I think the key was passion. I think that's what we're kind of giving on a daily basis. We were there on the weekends, at nighttime, up until when I met my wife at 32, where she was like, hey, you maybe should find a balance. And I think she was very right at the time. But, at that time, it was pretty much 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, wake up, boom, get to the club, spend the entire day there. And when you're about to do this, okay, I got to go home and tomorrow's another day type of deal. So,
well, I think it doesn't matter. It's ageless. I think any entrepreneur, especially when he has that fire in him, like you said, it's a 7 day, and sometimes it's good to have your better half next to you to remind you that you got to breathe a little bit and
for sure
step back just for your own health there,
for sure.
Mental and physical.
For sure.
But and is there a reason? Because you talked about traveling internationally, you went to a lot of countries through tennis to play those tournaments. Why did you come back here? Was it because it's home or?
Good question. I think it's home. I think it always felt like home. The only other place that felt like home was Florida.
Okay.
When I was there, I would always feel home. But no matter where I was in the world, at a certain point, I would start to have that feeling that it's time to go back. So I think that's why it was Montreal, and the opportunities presented in Montreal, and things kind of just started to boom, 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 boom. And there was many periods where it's like, should I go to Florida? Should I go there? And just life kind of way it worked out kind of just always brought me back to Montreal.
A little bit too. I used to travel a lot for work, and when it's January here, it gets pretty cold. So acquaintances or friends would be like, "Oh, you're lucky." Yeah, but I'm going to Dubai for work, not for. And whenever I always had the same feel. I'm happy to leave, but when I come back,
happy to be back.
And I hear my first a word that starts with T. It's a very French expression. Yeah. I'm always like, "Yes, I'm home," and I always smiled.
Yeah,
so waiting for the Uber or whatever. Yeah. So all right. So you had your academy from 23 to
32. So during those 9 years
in Longueuil.
During that period.
And it ended because
the end was a contract renewal that we couldn't agree upon. So we got to the point where they were opening up the doors. I had an exclusive kind of contract at the time where I could coach and run everything myself, and there was nobody that could come in, and the exclusivity went out. So we were many coaches for about a year or two that were working in the building. The team atmosphere that we had created was no longer really there anymore, and I started to feel like I needed to step up to the next level and take it to another level. What I realized at that moment was I invested 9-10 years of my life into something that wasn't mine. So I told my wife that day that the next project that I go on like this, the clubs will be mine, and then I will give my 100% into it. So from 32, I guess, up until just right after the pandemic, those 6-7 years, there was a lot of different projects in the works, and my wife was really patient to be by my side at that time, because I wanted to buy my coach's academy in Florida, and that didn't work out. And I wanted to build a tennis club in Zistrant, and that didn't work out. And I wanted to build another tennis club in Technopole Angus in Montreal, and that didn't work out. So then there was a Saint Constant project right up the road here that I was going to be part of. That didn't work out. So there was many failures, and the wife looked at me near the end and was starting to say, listen, at one point, I understand your dream to have your own tennis clubs and develop champions and this and that, but at one point we're going to have to be realistic. And if it doesn't happen, we're going to have to move on to other things. And real estate was starting to become a curious thing for me at that time. We did a few flips, and it was a way of making a little bit extra cash on the side. And I started to understand more the real estate. My wife's a real estate agent for 15 years. So it's something that she did for a long time with Remax. And I started to learn with her and buddies around that were in real estate that were pretty successful, top real estate agents here in Canada. And I started to realize that real estate also interests me. So tennis, real estate, and this allowed both. So
she's into tennis as well, I believe.
She went NCAA. She was a provincial national level player here in Quebec. She's a tennis player. We didn't know each other. We know all each other's friends. Growing up, we're 4 years difference. And somehow our paths had never crossed. So shout out to my wife, who ever since I've met her, my life has become 10 times better than it was before. So we share the passion of tennis, obviously. That's one thing. We love to travel. When we had our first child together, I think that's when life really changed for me. It's when I realized that
you're a father now.
I'm a father now. I need to spend better time with my family. I need to find a better balance. And when I started to find that balance is when even more things started to fall into place, I think. And I think it's a lot. Kudos to her. I mean, she's my rock. I'm the more emotional, I'm the more dreamer, I'm the more thinker, and she's always the one to kind of yes, no, and kind of
grounded.
ground
in
me,
reality,
exactly.
not that you're not, but life is about that sometimes, black and white, yin and yang. I believe in fire and ice, not fire and oil. It's passionate, but all you do is know. So that's why I guess we're here. Talk to us. How did Sani Sport? Because these clubs were already established on the South Shore. There's not a lot of guys were in Canada, so we have something called snow in the winter. So tennis, maybe that's why. So there's not that many indoor tennis facilities. This one was established, I think it's been over
1974. It's our 50th anniversary, started in September.
Exactly, 50 years. But how did you guys come to even?
Honestly, it's right place, right time. That's what my wife will say. That's what I would say. All those failures that were leading up to that moment in 2019, my wife was playing interclub at Boucherville, Sani Sport. And I had one kid here, and one kid here, and we were watching my wife play. And I decided to go see the owner at the time because the project in Saint Constant that I was looking at didn't work out. And I went to see him to see if there's any opportunities at Sani Sport for more coaching, more my academy, more on that end. And that day, the ex-owner, Alain, kind of emptied his heart. He's kind of frustrated about everything. It's been so long he's doing it. And he was pretty much burnt out, and he was pretty much tired, and he was ready to pull the plug. And all I could see was opportunity that day. And I had a lesson the next day with my business partner at Longueuil. And I told Alain that I'd be back the next day with an offer. And he said, there's no way, it's not financeable. And for him, it was impossible. And I went to see Drew that day, and we talked about it, and we discussed it, and he was super open to doing it. And my wife was open to doing it. And we went to see Alain the next day, and we said, listen, we want to buy your clubs. We're shooting. I mean, we were shooting.
Yeah.
we're
point
hoping,
blank there.
you know, we were hoping. And it just so happened that the vibe was right, the timing was right, he was ready to sell, and the process began. And this was all pre-pandemic, right?
And this, so, and during that time, you guys are, it's yourself, your wife, and
Julien. And it's my wife pretty much that does everything, and me and Drew are in the background because she's doing all the real estate transactions. So all the due deals, all the analyzing of the buildings, the analyzing of the lands, the numbers, the this, that. It's my wife who's pretty much on top of all of that. We're there to help her, but she was the one who pretty much took care of the entire transaction, leading it up. And everything was finalized. The family that sold us the club were 4. So there was 2 and 2. So we had 2 lawyers that we had to negotiate with, not 1.
Okay.
And there was 1 brother that refused to sign. And this is March 12th. And I think that day is the worst day in the world because everything's done. I'm 100 grand in on due deals. I put it all in on this project. It has to work. And this guy's not signing my paper. And the next day, pandemic is announced and the world is ending and everybody's shut down. And it ended up being the best thing possible because we didn't want that thing when the pandemic started. You know what I mean? If we would have walked in there with mortgage payments and this and that and actually having the buildings at that time, we would have been screwed. So he saved our life. I cried in my garage for 2 nights straight because I couldn't believe that I was that close to finally touching it and finally having my clubs, and now it didn't happen. There was a lot of failures, but this one was like, it was concrete. It was done. It was official. Everybody said yes to all the terms. There was nothing left to do except for put the name on the paper. So that day was tough. The whole beginning of March of the pandemic was tough in March. I'd say from March 13th to like the 31st, and then we had met the sellers. The sellers were agreeing to kind of push it back. And they're like, "There's no pressure. We could do this in a year from now." And so we started to focus on.
But for you, it's like the end of the world.
It was the end of the world at the time. But we worked out. We started to eat well. We started to play with the kids. We started to focus on what we could focus on in-house, and everything started to fall back in place about a year later. And on 2021 August, we took the keys. And I remember for that whole period, no one was allowed to talk to me about the project. Not Julien, not my wife, nobody. I don't want to talk about it. Don't jinx it. All the other ones were jinxed. So I was like,
you're a tennis player, and all those,
all the superstitions came into play. No one says a word until you give me the fucking keys in my hand. Then we know it's official and nobody can take it away. So that was kind of the situation. And on August 15, 2021, they handed me the keys, and it was the first time I was celebrated and even thought that it could happen, you know? So it was walk into the building, everybody's masked up. We got 2 buildings to go to. There's restrictions everywhere, 2-meter distance. Don't do this. Don't go to the gym. The restaurants are closed. It was 112 employees to meet with their masks on. So I actually worked with a bunch of employees for over a year, and I didn't know what they looked like.
Because they had their masks on, yeah.
So I remember a year later when all the pandemic was done and we started taking masks, I'm like, oh, hey, good to see you, Danny, and great to see you, Melody. And, you know, you start to actually really see who people were. So that was a pretty interesting moment. But I remember it felt like it all made sense. The whole journey, the failures, the tennis player that didn't become, the academy owner that at the end didn't have his club to work in anymore, all those periods. And then...
Was that how you see yourself now? And with the club after, the tennis player who, I'm just using your words, maybe I'm rephrasing, the tennis player who never made it? And then...
Well, I think there's a bit of, you know, there's a little part of me that dreamt so hard about that I really always felt it would happen. And I still feel it inside like that. And I think now we're at the point where...
But you seem to be at peace with it, though.
I am at peace with it because I think it was meant to be. Like, I think the journey of playing the 10 years and, you know, meeting all the high-level players, the Floor and Marriage, all the Grand Slam winners that I got the opportunity and privilege to be surrounded with as buddies. That's
very cool. Yeah.
Which was really cool. But at the time, I was too cool in my head to really...
Because you surrounded yourself with these...
Well, they're my peers.
They're your peers, and but they're stars too.
They're stars,
so
but I want to beat them, and it got to my head a little bit. And, you know, I just didn't realize how lucky I was at that time because I was surrounded by tons. And I think I'm okay with it now because I realized that was part of the journey to accumulate the mileage and the experience to be able to share my passion today with people and have the knowledge to share with people too as well. So,
and in all that, you are a father and you have 4 children. So, I mean, You sleep once in a while, or
I sleep at night really good.
okay?
You'd be surprised, but
No, but you sleep good. Do you sleep long though? You still have
not
those
that
7
long.
hours.
It's my 7. I'm in bed by midnight. I don't go to bed past midnight, and we have tons of events all the time lately that sometimes make us go to bed later. And I could have a night where I don't drink anything, go to bed at 2 and 3, and wake up feeling hangover the next day because my sleep is so important. It's not a lot, but those 7 hours are crucial and they're deep. So yeah, I sleep well. I don't have any issues with my sleeping, and being a father, well, you know, that's the biggest success of my life is those 4 kids. So spending time with them. The pandemic was also a great opportunity to
get closer,
be with them, you know, in the beginning phases of their life. I spent days and days, and we were doing mathematics. I was doing boot camps outside. We had basketball, we had baseball, we had soccer, we had football. We were doing tons of sport development at the time too. So
you didn't say tennis.
We were doing tennis.
Okay, are they coming? Are some of them into it?
Well, Sophia, she's on the Quebec team right now, under 10.
Okay,
she's loving tennis now. She's talking about tennis a lot. My mindset on don't specialize in tennis too early. I think it's a really tough sport to specialize. It's a long marathon to be a good tennis player. And I think the kids that start only in tennis at 6 and don't play anything else, it's really difficult for them to last to 25, 26, 27.
Moi, c'est my uncle in France, c'est exactement ça. 5 ans, I didn't want to be there.
Yep.
The French, you know how they are.
Yep.
Maybe they have really good. I'm not trying to.
Yep.
Really good. They know tennis.
Yep.
It's their sport. I want to stay here with my friends.
Yeah. Which most kids do. And I can still remember even my uncle who, helped me so much become the man I am today. But there'd be times we'd rip balls for 4 hours, and we lived in the same building.
Yeah.
And it's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. And I really like to go play with my buddies for an hour now. And I kind of get that.
Let's rip some more.
Do you think champions sleep? Let's go. We got to go back and hit more serves. And, it is what makes the success. And now I even heard my daughter say it to me recently, where she's like, I don't get to see my friends very much. My first answer was, well, then go see your friends and don't play tennis. Yeah, but then I won't get good. Exactly. So you have to make choices.
Oh, she understands already.
She does understand.
Okay.
And you have to make choices. And I said, at the end of the day, no matter what you're going to do, it's always going to be a choice. And you have that choice, and you have that opportunity to make the choice that's best for you. And you can't have regrets after. You're not going to blame me, because I told you since you're born, do what you love. And that's what's important to me. I actually tried to not let them play tennis at first. My wife kept asking me in the beginning why you don't bring them tennis. And I didn't even mention tennis in the pandemic as sports, because I believe in multi-sport development. I believe in building an athlete before you build a specialist in a sport. And I didn't want my kids to become specialists in tennis and then look at me down the road at 13, 14 and be like, Dad, you took my childhood away. We didn't get to play tennis. We didn't get to do that. I didn't want to ever be blamed. So anytime there's like, I don't want it, hey, don't play if you don't want to. It's your choice. It's not mine.
So the father is like different. Because look, I met you. You were a coach. Back then I was a junior. It was more on the high level side. And I remember with some of the juniors, like the man I'm seeing in front, like the attitude, and I think it's normal. The father was completely different than you put on your high level coach, and it was more like you're here to work. You put in the work. It's not your choice. You're here. And
hold on though. Once you make your choice, you work. You understand, that doesn't change. So the same high performance hat I used to put on when you were back on my courts back in the days, it's still the standard, and it's still the case. You're on my court, you work your butt.
Yeah,
and you better have a good attitude, and you better give your best, and I better not hear you complaining. That stays. And that stays in my house also.
Yeah.
You better try your best, and you better not have a bad attitude. But you make your own choices though, right? So no matter what it's going to be, if they're going to be in ballet, they're going to be in art, they're going to be in singing, they're going to be in basketball. I don't care what they're doing. You do your best and you excel in what you do. And that is a value that stays at my house no matter what. I mean, that comes from sports back in the days, and comes from me as an entrepreneur and me as a father. Well, I continue to reiterate that to my children. And you be respectful, you be polite, you say thank you, you look people in the eyes when you talk to them. These values stay for me. These are things that are very important for me.
That's good. And as a coach, I mean, I think you were, and I still think you are, not that we do tennis anymore, but back then I remember during, especially those rocky years, teenage, from 15 to 18 years, especially as men, we're pretty dumb, and critical thinking is starting there. Shouting at me, shouting personally for me, we're all different. But for me, shouting at me was never the way. If you in ski, it was the same thing. If you shout, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna try to burn you even more, troll you even more. And we always got along well because you never once raised your voice at me. And sometimes just passing me those comments like "Jam, I'm not impressed," or "Oh, really?" Like it would hurt me a lot more, and it would get to me a lot more than someone who just screams at me like and says something, because it comes in one ear, it goes the other, and I'm kind of happy to sort of like piss you off. So I think well, that's coaching, right? It's the mental.
It is coaching, and I think there are days and sometimes when the voice is raised and it's raised to get a reaction. I think kids have changed a lot also in the last 20 years. There's a big change in kids with their cell phones in their hands all the time, and they're pretty fully distracted, and sometimes they get on courts and they want to be good, but when they're asked to work, they don't want to work because they're in that instant gratification kind of generation right now. So yeah, the voice does get raised sometimes. Like maybe I'm older and I'm maybe less patient with certain things than I was before.
You're wiser.
I'm wiser, but I just always believe in positive reinforcement in the end. Yeah. I think I've always said the real things to people. I think sometimes you don't want to always hear what I have to hear sometimes too as an athlete, but I'll say it. So that can kind of pick sometimes people, but in general, I like to be calm. I like to be able to communicate. I like to have a good, proper conversation. I think we're humans, and I think that's what interests me the most in coaching and working with athletes is the human side. What makes someone tick? What makes someone excited? Why is that person nervous under pressure? Why is that person so ice cold under pressure? Like everybody's different that comes through the building. I think that's pretty interesting to me too as well.
When maybe you don't remember, we're much younger. Jordan from TV5 came and he interviewed you as a little segment. And what do you think of GM? And your answer was like good natural talents, like good feeling for the ball, but too relaxed there. He's not intense enough. Intensity, yeah, has to go up like ASAP. But and speaking of like,
I remember that interview, by the way.
Yeah. Now, good memory. So now that we are here in your sports facility, there's also a high-level performance academy, obviously, right? So I think you have a pretty impressive bunch of coaches, like a lot in there.
We have over 50 professionals. Everybody's fully certified and TPA members. So we're one of the only clubs right now in Canada. We got recognized 2 years back-to-back for that. We're actually just got named installation of the year in all of Canada.
Oh, congrats.
Last year I won Professional Excellence of the Year as well. So the back-to-back years, it's nice. I didn't get many recognitions over the last 20 years of what I've been doing. So it kind of felt like, the tap on the back that maybe I was kind of hoping for a long time also.
Maybe it motivates you to continue. You're doing good work.
Yeah. Continue. It gives me a little extra confidence and makes me feel a little, happy that people see also, because I never did it for people to see. But at one point, 15, 16 years down the road, you're like, does anybody see me doing this? Like, it's been years. I've been putting in 7 days a week, and I'm in tournaments the weekends with the kids. I'm with the parents. I'm doing this. I'm developing. But does anybody see it? Yeah, people saw it.
What's your opinion these days? Social media is so strong, and especially on randomly, because I see a lot of, whenever I connect to Facebook, we don't use Facebook to post stuff anymore. We use Facebook for Messenger or Marketplace. I see a lot of non-certified, improvised, self-called tennis coaches or instructors. It is a summer sport, so now that public courts are free outdoors in the summertime, what's your take on it? Because there seems to be a lot more than before because of the social media possibilities to outreach more people.
Would you be treated medically by a doctor that's not certified?
I wouldn't, but I'm just playing that.
I wouldn't take a lesson with somebody who's not certified.
Devil's advocate. Is it just? But in your opinion, they still do them. I still see them at parks. And look, I don't think in itself they're doing anything wrong. But technically, you're teaching me a forehand, and you can't even hit it right yourself. So how am I supposed to learn the fundamentals for such a technical sport? So is it something you're aware of? Or?
I'm fully aware of it. I see it happening. There's less and less of them, I think, but I think a lot of municipalities allow it. I think the private clubs have stopped it, but I think the municipalities allow it. And I think it always creates the same problem. The person comes to see me in October, November, and I've been taking lessons 2 days a week for the entire summer. And the person arrives and they're like, oh, who did you take a lesson with? And you got to get the name.
Sure you did tennis and not pickleball?
Yeah, exactly. It looks a lot more like pickleball, but but yeah, it's going on and it's happening and it's creating some injuries sometimes. And sometimes it's doing what it needs to do. It gives them the first little initiation to tennis and it gives them the desire to want to play. And there are some good non-certified coaches out there as well. But
For sure.
But there's, like always, there's a lot of that are not and that I would not suggest to take lessons with. But you know, if it's going to cost you $20 to hit balls with somebody who's decent versus $100 with a pro, and money's an issue, I understand. You know,
for sure. And do you have any plans in terms of? I'm still on the high level performance. You got any juniors coming up?
We have tons of really good young, I would say 13 and under kids right now. So when we bought the clubs 3 years ago, we had a few older players that came from other clubs.
Okay,
I won't mention where.
Okay.
But those players came. Those players came from other clubs with their culture, with their mentality. Good tennis players, very good. So someone did a good technical job with these guys. Someone did a good tactical job with these guys. But someone missed the complete boat mentally with these guys. And some of these guys came in and they want to be high performance players. They want to be at this level, but they don't want to put in the work. And then you see them out here kind of not giving the efforts, and they have everything possible. They have the coaching team around them. They have the fitness coaching around them. They have AI information on stats and data. They got mental performance training. They have everything that we never had, and it wasn't enough. You know, like sometimes you look at them and they're just complaining 24/7, every day complaining. I'm like, you love tennis? Yeah. I don't feel like you love tennis. Like maybe you don't love tennis. Maybe you should be doing something else, you know?
And is it because like they're really naturally good? And I'm just trying to understand, or is just the like we said earlier, the instant gratification?
That's my specialist. So there's a few of those kids that played just tennis since they've been 6.
Okay.
You know, and they come in with a different attitude. And how much can I influence that when they're about to leave for college in a year or two anyway? Okay. So we helped them, we guided them. But I kept always seeing this group of young kids underneath them that were coming up that I've rarely seen. We got this really good next gen program that we have under 14s. And we've got tons of kids in there that great attitudes, great athletes, super humble, respectful. What we see right now on the provincial national circuit is a lot of kids with emotional issues. They're really mad. They're talented, but they're busting rackets all the time. I hate tennis. I'm going to quit tennis, but they're back the next week. And there's a lot of that going on, but that group down there is pure passion. And we also have a problem with this because all these kids are coming off a tennis court and they're like this, and they're before practice, they're on this. Back in the days, we used to be hitting serves before. We go play a mini tennis battle, waiting for the coaches, go warm up, we hit the gym, do a bit of weights,
jump rope,
do something, you know? And these kids are not. They're like, oh, it's my lesson. And they're getting up off their things. But the other generation, so let's say my 12, 13-year-olds right now, they're in that mindset with this. But the young 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, I can't get them off the courts. They're on the courts all the time, and I love it. Yeah, they're just good, playing and they're playing. I never see the phone in their hands, and I think their parents are raising them a little bit different. I think maybe pandemic, those kids got a lot of technology because it was a very difficult situation for everybody being in the same house together. And you have a couple of kids and maybe you need a break as a parent, so you gave a break with giving them an iPad or an iPhone, but kind of backfired on them now. And now they're having to deal with like, well, what do I do with my kid? And Ricky, can you and your team help my kid? Well, it depends. When I threw my racket when I was a kid, it wasn't my coach who managed the situation, it was my dad. And my dad clearly told me that if you do that again, you're not playing tennis no more. So there's a limit on what we can do as coaches, and there's a part that the parents need to do their job.
Oh, of course.
But they're expecting us to do it. You know, like my kid, he's just not giving the effort. Well, does he still have his cell phone in his hand at home? Yeah. Does he still have all his privileges? Yeah. Well, what message are you sending? You know, so parents need to kind of step up to their job. I find parents these days don't want to do the parent job. My kids are not my friends. They're my children, and I need to raise them, and I need to explain things to them, and they're not going to agree with me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Well, I think dentists have the same, ironically, I think dentists have the same reality as you. The parents complain about cavities, but they let them eat whatever sugar they want. So
well said.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said. And at the end of the day, like the parents, if you're going to let your kid tank matches, you're going to let your kid have a bad attitude, if you're going to let your kid disrespect other players, if you're going to let your kid disrespect the coaching staff, don't come seeing us and ask us what the problem is. You know, at the end of the day, the problem is the values that you're giving to your kid and the education you're giving to your kid. So, you know, we have 90% of really good families in our academy. We have 90% really good kids. And slowly but surely, the 10% are starting to kind of fade out and disappear. And I'm really happy about that, because we can actually be in a culture where we can develop champions now, because we have a champions mindset and culture in the club now.
If you do, and there is a possibility, right? Are you how do you see yourself in the future? I mean, you have a big family, you manage two tennis complete, well, racket I should go beyond tennis, racket facilities. Could you see yourself, for example, like Patrick Mouratoglou, the French famous Serena Williams ex tennis coach, could be a bit on tour, maybe back home, and balance it all out?
I mean, right now is where we stand today. The kids are in school. We have programs. We're developing still. We haven't been established for a long time. It's 3 years that we're established as a performance academy. We have a lot of things to still prove and develop. But yeah, let's say 15 years down the road from now, I'm almost close to 60 at that point, 55. My kids maybe are playing high level sports or doing other things. Maybe I want to be on the road with them a little bit more at that time. Maybe I do have players from the academy that are popping out that I want to go with too. And yeah, I mean, what Patrick has built and what he has done, I think is phenomenal. To do something parallel or similar to what Patrick did would be a great success. Yes.
Okay. So is that, I mean, I guess you answered part of it, but I was going to go on the next segment. What's the next chapter? What's in it for Ricky, for Sani, for...
Well, Sani, I want to be the reference in Canada for what it is to be a racket sport facility. So as far as culture goes, as far as, you know, innovating and ahead of time, seeing trends that are coming before other people see them, that for me in the next years coming up is the most important for me. I think I want to make sure that we achieve that point. I want to be the best club. This is, for me, we have 2 installations. We have the biggest installations. I want to take advantage of that opportunity, and I want to make sure that we end up being known as the best installations in Canada.
Can you mention it? Teasers of what's coming up in the next year? You can.
Well, we have a little bit of pickleball coming up.
Okay.
So pickleball is a boom that we cannot miss.
Mm-hmm.
I've been developing tennis for 20 years. I'm taking 4 tennis courts out to put 12 pickleball courts in, which crushes my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But it's there. The pickleball is exploding. You know, tennis has always been kind of a more snobbish sport. It's kind of been an elite sport. Conservative. Not everybody can play. We give a clinic to people for 8 weeks. I've probably initiated, I don't know, let's say 10,000 people to tennis over the last 20 years, let's call it. Out of those 10,000, like, you asked 9,999, and like, it's the toughest sport in the world, you know? And now pickleball is the opposite. Everybody who touches pickleball, like, I could be a pro pickleball player. I was amazing.
Well,
So this is like, it's the access of pickleball that's making it so easy right now. So everybody can play. There's a social aspect to it. And I think we can't miss that boom, because we have part of our members that are getting to an age that physically it's going to be really difficult for them to cover a tennis court.
Yep.
So we can transfer these guys over to pickleball.
And the new ones want to play
the new gen
pickleball,
that we're developing in tennis can go into tennis. There's also a new gen developing into pickleball. So I think at the end, it just gives us a better latitude for the future to make sure the installations are busy, to make sure our restaurant is full too, and, you know, bring some more foot traffic towards the boutiques and stuff. So pickleball is definitely on the short term our next big opportunity. We're renovating all of the locker rooms. We're putting 1.4 million into the 4 locker rooms this summer to make them a little bit more spa zen kind of feel, so that once you finish your training, you can actually recuperate properly. We've been putting 1.4 million pretty much every year into the buildings, as far as the heating systems, the air conditioning units, the lighting. So we want to make sure our members have the best installation. We want them to know it. I won't name any, but there are some installations that are semi falling apart here in Quebec right now. So that are charging more than we are charging. Also, we're still one of the cheapest clubs in Quebec. So, you know, we're installation wise, I think we want to be top notch, because we want it to be the reference,
while being accessible, like you just said.
Being accessible, exactly.
So I think that's important too. You know, out of all people, I think you know.
Yeah, I want to make sure that kids can play tennis, we have a foundation now that we have also, the Sani Foundation. So it started with when you open a sports study program here in Quebec now, since the last 2-3 years, you have to have an OBNL. So it's an organization that's not for profit.
Mm-hmm.
So our sports study is not for profit now. We don't make profit with it. Everything that's kind of profit for the season, it's given back to the athletes at the end of the year. So we give bursaries away now, that sponsorships, scholarships, and stuff like that for players, so that we can kind of diminish the programs. It's only year 3, so we haven't given huge scholarships. We've given like $2,500 of scholarships over the last couple of years, but the goal would be to, our top players eventually don't have to pay, and we can support our athletes. I would like to be able to be agent to our athletes eventually, where we can take care of them transitioning into tours and going to international levels, and find the sponsors for these guys and stuff too. So, it's not just training them, it's managing them too that interests me. It's, being part of the Sani family and kind of pushing Sani internationally eventually after. So what we're doing here organically in Quebec, and then eventually
you can reproduce
by our players, kind of pushing out the Sani brand everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's what, like you said, and you talked about it earlier, I want to open in Florida. That's exactly what the biggest guys in Florida are doing down there. IMG, which was Nick Balteri back then, and probably others, which I don't have the names on the top of my head there.
Oh, you had Chris Edwards, you had Rick Macy.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of big academies down there that were doing exactly that. In Spain, same thing with like guys like Bruguera and Sanchez Vicario, and these guys opening up big academies down there. So I saw it, I wanted it.
You lived it.
I lived it. I saw it. I'm like, I want to have one day like the best players coming out of my academy one day. So. And
I know that the tournament, which happened earlier this year or last year, there was a women's WTA.
We had
I know that was you, because since when do except the Rogers Cup and now the Omnium, what is it called? The National Bank.
The National Bank Open.
Open. Before that, when did we see WTA and?
We were very happy. It was one of our goals when we first arrived. We said within the first 5 years we would do our first international event here at the Sani Sports to promote tennis, first of all, to allow the young kids in our programs to dream.
I think it was free too, right?
Yeah, it was free. We didn't charge anybody. We wanted the most people to
come and witness, and see professionals play. Yeah.
Because, I can still remember having good high-level national events at Tennis 13 when I was a kid. It inspired me to become a good tennis player. So I was like, if we could have pros in our own club that were accessible to our kids, that they could almost, go get autographs from and almost, hit a couple balls in mini tennis with, how great of an opportunity for our kids would that be? So.
And during the National Bank Open, whenever it rains, they do come and train here.
Yeah, last year we had Swiatek, we had Sabalenka, we had Zhang, we had Wozniacki, Pliskova, Venus. So we had some big names last year. It was pretty, but I was getting my award last year at Toronto at the exact same moment on center court.
Okay.
So I actually remember the 2-3 days we were in Toronto was the 2-3 days that all the players came.
So you missed.
I wasn't there.
You missed.
Everybody else got to take advantage. Their pictures are all over the club and signed now, but me and Daniela at the time were not there. So
okay. Well, I guess now this year it's the men's.
This year it's the men's, and
probably gonna rain.
And I just got the award for installations of the year, so I have to go back to Toronto again.
So so you're gonna miss them again.
I might miss them again.
Okay, great.
But only 2 days of the. So
well, in Toronto, don't you see because you saw the men? Since
last year we were at the men. The award was given out on center court after Milos and Tiafoe played last year.
Okay, so you saw the guys, and this year you're gonna see the girls. So you still see them. You just miss them in your own facilities.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, well, overall, I mean, obviously, I think it's a cool story there from your start, because I think you're from how should I put it? You're from a very humble background, so to speak. You weren't like, not that there's anything wrong. I mean, if your folks could afford it, but not everyone in tennis, because I think there's a stereotype that you play tennis so your parents are filthy rich.
Yeah. And it was definitely the case when I grew up playing tennis, because, let's say 13 years old, I go to my first tournament, and I can specifically remember the moment where I'm in my dad's like Chevy Nova, fully rusted, that like has like smoke coming out the back pipe, and I'm really embarrassed. Like at 13, I'm in adolescence, I'm a little bit insecure, and in this parking lot we're pulling into, it's like Benzes, Beamers, Range Rovers. It's not my world when I first walk into that, and I'm coming from Lachine where, we're playing basketball, and after basketball games at night, I'm pretty much running to the bus stop to make sure I don't get taxed, and I'm trying to, baseball might finish with two parents fighting in the crowd because we're in a little bit rougher areas at the time. And yeah, I think the tennis world was obviously very rich. I think it's what also attracted me to tennis, though, because I was like, if I surround myself with all of these successful people, A, I'm going to learn from these guys, and B, I think it's just a question of nature. I'm going to eventually become successful too, So
Yeah, I get it.
I was in this world where it was very interesting. You had a lot of kids with a lot of money, with a lot of opportunity, and then my uncle was always showing me the other side, how they were lacking a little bit of fire. They were lacking a little bit of fight because it was easy what they had, and we were having a little bit harder. So he somehow convinced my mindset at that period to, let's use that as an extra motivation. So when I'm running that hill, it's like, don't forget that rich kid has got his, he's got his coach, he's got his fitness trainer, he's got this, he's got that. We're gonna be showing up in the Toyota Tercel and we're gonna kick their fucking ass. It was kind of that mindset. Sure. So yeah, it was definitely a very snobbish kind of world that I walked into at 13. But I think in the end, there's really good people in the tennis world, and there's really humble people as well. And
sure,
but I came from a 5.5 apartment in Lachine, and it was all quite new to me. I can still remember the first couple of times going to my buddy's house for the first time, and it's like, he's got a mansion, we got a 5.5. But it was funny at that period at 17 years old, all these rich kids would come to my 5.5 apartment and spend a night there so we could train the next day. And my mom was always like, how come all these rich kids want to spend time with us? And how come? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was just more down to earth at our house.
Grounded, down to earth. It's cool.
It was just kind of, hey, let's just go grab a bite to eat and go shoot some hoops and play a couple sets. And maybe it was different than want to go to the 5-star restaurant and eat pasta. But they were 13. They didn't give a shit about that stuff.
Yeah. So. No, when you're 13, I think like we all do, we give a shit about McDonald's and nuggets.
Exactly.
Well, anyways, Rick, I think this was quite interesting. Is there anything you would like to add on as a last segment, or if not?
I think just a message to the kids.
Okay.
So the generation that's coming up, get off your damn cell phones.
They won't, but
get off your cell phones, get off the TikToks, get off the Snapchats, get off that garbage. Go out there, move your butts around. I've noticed the generation's pretty hard on themselves these days. They're, je suis nul, je suis pas bon, I'm not good, I suck. I feel like we were so cocky at our ages that I compare the generations, and I'm like, what happened?
I'm not gonna get into it, not to create a feud, but with the whole cancel culture and everything. And I think there has been progress in terms, but there's always pluses and negatives. And like you said, with instant gratification, with having the world at your fingertips, I mean, I hope at least you'll watch this podcast. But
yeah, well, I think it's just to select and to kind of choose when. You know what I mean? Like, there's many times
there needs to be a period of time, because even for us, we still had TV. I couldn't watch. Or at least in my household, I couldn't watch TVs 3 hours at night. It was like one.
Yeah, you watch the highlights on sports, probably catch the end of a little flick and then pass out.
There you go.
These guys are on it 4 or 5 hours a day, and they're walking around in the club like this. And honestly, I think next year I put the box in the front. You drop off your cell and you pick it up at the end of the day.
Oh, that would be you'll get resistance at first, but you know what people do? They hate it at first, and then they get used to it.
Yeah, and then they'll see the result, though, because I did it with my son this year, and he was not happy, and I took his phone away.
Oh, when he comes home?
Well, he's always been allowed in the last year or two. He's really good in school. I never had problems with him. He's a great kid. Never more than an hour a day. That's my rule. Okay, and now he hit 13, so he got a cell. He was iPad. He would do it from 8 to 9 at night. All of a sudden, it's the cell phone. It's in his pocket, so I catch him with 3 hours one time, 4 hours one time. I told you it's 1 hour a day. One point, take the phone away, give it back to him. 3-4 hours again, take it away from him, give it back to him. This process has been going on for like the last 4 or 5 months now. And every time he doesn't have it, he's different. He's so much better. He's chill. He's relaxed. He's there. He's present. He's with us. And when he has it, it's like just a little different. It's not a big difference, but this little difference. And I think from working with kids over the last 20 years, something is affecting them deep down in their energy, in their souls, in their spirits, and it's that technology. And I can guarantee it because it affects me. I'm an adult. I went through half my life with it and half my life without it. So I've kind of lived two periods of my life differently with it. I was way more free when I didn't have this stuff. You know, we used to leave the house.
I think the same thing, but maybe it's the older man in me. We all age, right? It's life, and you know, I always heard the bigger kids or our family or whatever. Oh, in my days it was better. Well, me too. I'm already starting to miss the good old days. To be honest,
me too. I mean,
especially growing up.
Yeah,
no cell phone, no nothing, no social media. Exactly. I used to play in a park and be happy. So
sometimes I'm training kids and they can't throw, and I'm like, why can't you throw? We used to throw so many snowballs.
No, but exactly, miss.
That we were
that era is gone. So
dodging the things. Our reflexes were so good, and like sometimes they're so slow these days, motor wise, and it's affected by this. And I try to explain it. I know I can't take it away from them, and I know I can't make them stop using it, but I just want them to know that it's not going to help you. Use it for the right things. It's got a lot of information. There are really cool things I never could see, like my idols growing up and how they train or what they do and things like that, which I would have loved. I love everything that's motivational, and there's tons of motivation stuff now that you can go get, but there's also tons of junk out there too. And just like, don't waste your brain. Don't fry your brain. Spend your time different. Spend it with friends. I
love how many tennis specialists there are on YouTube, how to hit a forehand, but a lot of them are, exactly. So there you go.
I think that for all the other people out there, hit 10,000 balls at your forehand will be good, but there's no specialist or special trick to do it. That's for sure.
All right. Well, Rick, I want to thank you for your time. And on a personal note, I just want to say I always appreciated you. I think your segment of my teenage years, at least on the tennis side, it was always I always respected you. I believe it was always mutual. Now I'm an adult, and I just think back, like those years were great, and I'm super happy. Like when you told me you finally got your thing meaning, okay, not your thing. You finally got your own place, your own academy. I was really happy for you. And I've been following. I've been a fan ever since. And like you said, all the stuff you mentioned that you had in the works, just your first WTA and all the other stuff, I'm pretty sure it's quite motivating. It's quite thrilling. And, you know, the family too. So I'm just going to wish you the best of luck. And
appreciate it, buddy. That's always appreciated you too. And, you know, I'm happy to hear I influence you in a good, positive way, because at the end of the day, it's worth more than any paycheck. And it's what I try to tell my young pros that are up and coming, that work in the club, that work with players and stuff. Sometimes they're more focused on their money than what the impact they're giving on these kids' lives, you know. And
you did, because we with I don't know if you remember Thomas. Once we had a practice session or something, and you said something to him, which was nothing, but you know, he took it personal. It happens, you know, emotions. And he said something, and right away I'm like, don't call him that. And he was talking about you.
And what did he call?
Nothing. He just said it was nothing personal. It was just because you said something, it upset him, and he said, you know, you were younger, he said a bad thing. Oh, he's a jerk, something. And right away, don't tell him that. And I never did that for other coaches. You could call my ski coach a jerk. I couldn't care less. But I was like, don't defend him right away. No, but it made me realize, okay, I like him. Because otherwise, why would I come to, not that you need it, but to his defense, especially when he's not there. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make the difference in people's lives. We want to influence people in a positive way. We want to be, you know, an impact in people's lives. And we hope that, you know, people come down the road later on and are like, you know, thank you very much, coach, for guiding me in the right direction. Like, I thank all my coaches that I've had in my life, Alex Shields, Bill Adams, Jose Altour, Pancho Alvarino, you know, those coaches that spend time with me, Pierre Bouchard. It's because of them that I have this passion. It's because of them that I do what I do today. So I think there's always people behind you that push you in the right direction. So I hope, you know, I influenced you. I'm glad to hear that. And I hope I've influenced thousands of other kids over the years, and hope I continue to influence more thousands of other kids to dream big, go for their biggest dreams, and don't let anybody stop you.
I think that's the way to go. All right. Well, thanks, Rick.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, man.